Days passed after Alina's resignation, and Rayhan's office felt emptier than ever. Her absence was everywhere, in the quiet hallways, the spotless desks, even in the evening silence that used to be filled with her soft humming. He tried to focus on work, but nothing mattered anymore. Meetings felt meaningless and success tasted hollow. For years he had chased money and power, but now he realized the one thing he truly wanted had slipped away. The woman who had shown him what love and honesty really meant. He tried to call her, but her number was disconnected. He sent people to find her, but no one knew where she had gone. Even Imran, his loyal assistant, said carefully, "Sir, maybe she doesn't want to be found." Rayhan just nodded, though the thought broke him. "Maybe," he whispered, "but I can't stop looking." Meanwhile, Alina had moved to another part of the city. She found a small job at a local clinic, cleaning floors and helping with patients. It wasn't much, but it gave her peace, or at least she tried to convince herself it did. At night, she often thought about Rayhan. She remembered his kindness, his smile, and the way he looked at her, not as a maid, but as someone who mattered. But then she remembered the cruel whispers and Kamran's mocking words. "We come from different worlds," she told herself. "He'll forget me soon." Yet her heart didn't believe it. One afternoon, as Alina was sweeping near the clinic entrance, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You were wrong, Alina. I didn't forget." She turned sharply, her breath catching. Rayhan stood there, dressed simply, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. He looked tired but relieved, as if he had been searching for years. "Sir," she whispered, her eyes wide. "How did you—" "Find you?" He finished with a small smile. "You forgot I built an empire, Alina. I can find anyone. But this time, I wasn't looking for an employee. I was looking for you." She stood frozen, unable to move or speak. He stepped closer, his voice gentle. "Why did you leave without telling me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I didn't want to hurt you, sir. People already said terrible things. I couldn't let them destroy your name." Rayhan's voice deepened. "Let them talk. I've lived my whole life worrying about what people think, and in doing that, I lost everything that truly mattered." He handed her the flowers. "These are for you. I thought maybe you'd throw them away, but I still wanted to bring them." Alina looked down, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You shouldn't have come, sir. This isn't your world." Rayhan smiled softly. "Maybe my world was wrong. Maybe I was living in the wrong one all along." She shook her head. "You don't understand. People like me don't end up with people like you. The world won't accept it." Rayhan looked at her firmly. "Then I'll build a new world where they will." His voice was steady, full of emotion. "Alina, when you whispered those words to me, 'Don't sign this,' you didn't just save my business. You saved me. You made me see what life really is. And since that day, nothing's been the same." Alina's lips trembled. "Why me, sir? There are so many people in your world. Rich, beautiful, perfect." Rayhan took a slow breath. "Because none of them had your heart. None of them would have risked everything just to tell the truth. You didn't want anything from me. That's why I want you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the clinic faded into silence. Then Alina whispered, "If I say yes, your reputation—" "Let it burn," he interrupted softly. "I've lived for my reputation long enough. Now I want to live for love." Her tears finally fell freely as he stepped closer. "Rayhan, I don't know if I can fit into your life." "You already do," he said. "You've been in it since the moment you whispered those words." Just then, the clinic doctor came out and saw them standing together. "Alina, everything okay?" he asked kindly. She wiped her tears quickly and nodded. "Yes, doctor." Rayhan turned to the doctor respectfully. "She's one of the most honest people I've ever met," he said. "And I'm lucky to have known her." The doctor smiled politely and went back inside. Rayhan looked back at her. "Come with me, Alina. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm asking you to stand beside me, as you are." She hesitated, torn between fear and love. Finally, she said softly, "If I come with you, people will judge." "Then let them," he said, smiling. They'll get tired eventually. She laughed through her tears. You really haven't changed, have you? Maybe a little, he said, but only because of you. A week later, the news spread like fire. Millionaire Rayhan Khan announces engagement to former employee. Some mocked him, others admired his courage. But Rayhan didn't care. At the small ceremony held in a quiet garden, he stood beside Alina, holding her hand as cameras flashed around them. When a reporter asked, "Sir, aren't you worried about your reputation?" Rayhan simply smiled and said, "The only reputation I care about is being known as the man who loved honestly." Alina looked at him with tears of happiness, whispering, "You really changed your world." Rayhan squeezed her hand gently. "No, Alina, you changed mine." As the evening sun painted the sky gold, Rayhan leaned close and whispered, "Remember that day in my office? When you told me not to sign that contract?" She smiled softly. "How could I forget?" He smiled back. That whisper was the beginning of everything. It wasn't just a warning, it was fate. She rested her head on his shoulder as the crowd clapped around them. For the first time in their lives, the poor cleaning lady and the millionaire weren't divided by status or judgment, only united by something far stronger. Love born from honesty, courage, and a single whisper that changed everything forever. And so, the story that began with a warning ended with a promise that love, no matter how impossible it seems, can bridge any distance between two hearts that are meant to find each other. The next few weeks felt like a dream neither Rayhan nor Alina wanted to wake up from. Their bond grew stronger, though both kept their feelings quietly hidden behind polite words and careful smiles. Rayhan found excuses to see her every day, and Alina, though shy, couldn't deny that his presence had started to brighten her life in ways she never thought possible. But not everyone saw their growing closeness with kind eyes. Kamran, Rayhan's business partner, had noticed the change. He had always been jealous of Rayhan's success, and now seeing him pay special attention to a cleaning lady filled him with both disgust and opportunity. One morning, he walked into Rayhan's office pretending to be casual. "Rayhan, you've been different lately," he said with a fake smile. "More relaxed, more distracted. Is there something I should know?" Rayhan didn't look up from his papers. "Just focusing on what matters," he replied calmly. Cameron's eyes narrowed. "I see. And does what matters include your little friendship with that maid?" Rayhan looked up sharply, his voice firm. "Her name is Alina, and I don't appreciate your tone." Kamran laughed mockingly. "Come on, Rayhan, you're a millionaire. She's just a cleaner. Don't tell me you're falling for her." Rayhan stood, his expression cold. "Be careful with your words, Kamran. You wouldn't understand what respect means." Kamran raised his hands. All right. I was just joking. But people are starting to talk. And in our world, rumors spread fast." Rayhan didn't reply, but his silence was enough to show he was angry. After Kamran left, Rayhan felt a deep unease. He knew people in his circle could be cruel. They judged worth by wealth, not character. He didn't want Alina to suffer because of him. That evening, when he saw her leaving work, he called out softly, "Alina, wait." She turned, smiling. "Yes, sir?" He hesitated before saying, "I think it's better if we don't talk too much during office hours. People might misunderstand." Her smile faded slightly. "Oh, I understand, sir." Her voice was calm, but her eyes looked hurt. "It's not because I don't care," Rayhan added quickly. "It's because I do," she nodded. "I know, sir. You've done enough already." For the next few days, Alina kept her distance. She avoided his gaze, kept her head down, and spoke only when necessary. Rayhan missed her presence terribly, but didn't know how to fix it. His office felt empty without her quiet warmth. Meanwhile, Kamran continued to stir trouble. He began spreading rumors among the staff, whispering that Alina was using her closeness to Rayhan for personal gain. Within a week, people started gossiping behind her back. One afternoon, Alina walked into the pantry and heard two office clerks talking. "You know she got her brother's scholarship paid by the boss? Must be nice being close to him," one said sarcastically. The other laughed. Yeah, maybe she's smarter than she looks. Alina froze, her heart breaking. She turned away silently, tears stinging her eyes. She had done nothing wrong, yet people were making her feel small again. That night, she decided to quit. She wrote a short resignation letter and placed it on Rayhan's desk the next morning before he arrived. When Rayhan entered his office and saw the letter, his heart sank. He read it twice, barely believing his eyes. No, he whispered. Without wasting a second, he rushed to the cleaning area, where Alina was gathering her things. Alina! He called out, his voice trembling. She looked up, startled. Sir, why are you doing this? He demanded gently. You can't just leave. She looked down, tears brimming. People are talking, sir. They think wrong things about me. I can't stay and listen to their words. Rayhan's expression softened. You shouldn't care what they say. But I do, she said, her voice breaking. Because they're not just talking about me. They're talking about you. I don't want to ruin your reputation. Rayhan took a deep breath and said, My reputation means nothing if it costs me good people. Alina shook her head. You've already done enough for me, sir. Please let me go. Before Rayhan could reply, Kamran walked in, smirking. So it's true, he said loudly. The boss trying to stop his maid from leaving? How touching. Rayhan turned to him, fury burning in his eyes. Kamran, get out! But Kamran didn't stop. The board should hear about this. A millionaire risking his company's image for a poor girl. How romantic. He laughed cruelly. Rayhan's voice thundered. I said get out. Kamran flinched at the anger in his tone and quickly left, but the damage was done. Alina stood frozen, her eyes full of shame. You see, sir? This is what I wanted to avoid, she said quietly. Rayhan ran a hand through his hair, his frustration clear. I don't care what he or anyone says, he said. I care about you. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Alina's eyes widened, her heart skipping a beat. Sir, she whispered. Rayhan stepped closer, his voice softer now. You've done more for me than anyone ever has. You made me see the truth when I was blind. You made me feel again. I can't lose you, Alina. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered. But our worlds are not the same, sir. You're meant for something bigger. Don't, he interrupted. Don't ever call yourself just anything. You're the reason I became a better man. For a long moment they stood there, the air heavy with emotion neither could escape. But before anything more could be said, Alina stepped back. Please, sir, she said softly. Let me go before this gets worse. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Rayhan standing there, his heart breaking silently. That night, as rain poured outside, Rayhan sat alone in his dark office, staring at the empty chair she used to sit near. Every sound reminded him of her soft footsteps, her quiet voice, her gentle smile. He realized now that he wasn't just grateful to her. He loved her, truly, deeply, painfully. But he also knew that love alone might not be enough to fight the world that stood between them. He looked out the window at the city lights and whispered, You changed my life once, Alina, maybe now. It's my turn to change yours. In the days that followed, things slowly began to change between Rayhan and Alina. Their worlds were still very different. One of wealth and power, the other of simplicity and struggle, yet fate kept bringing them closer. Alina continued to work quietly, never expecting any reward for what she had done. But she noticed something different in Rayhan's eyes whenever he passed her in the hallway. He no longer looked through her like before. Now, he looked at her, as if he truly saw her for the first time. One afternoon, as she was cleaning near the executive floor, Rayhan stopped by and asked softly, Alina, do you have a moment? She looked nervous but nodded. Yes, sir. He gestured toward the lounge. Please sit. I just wanted to talk, she hesitated. Sir, I shouldn't sit here. It's for senior staff, Rayhan smiled. You've done more for this company than most of them. Sit, please. Reluctantly, she sat on the edge of the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Rayhan leaned forward. I read your file, he said. You've been working here for almost 3 years, right? She nodded. Yes, sir. I started after my father passed away. Rayhan listened as she spoke about her life, how her father's small business collapsed after being cheated, how she left her studies to support her mother and younger brother, and how every day was still a struggle. Her voice trembled a little, but she never complained. She spoke with quiet dignity, her words filled with honesty and strength. Rayhan felt something twist in his chest as he listened. This young woman had faced pain most people couldn't imagine, yet she carried it with such grace. After their talk, Rayhan couldn't stop thinking about her. He started noticing little things, the way she helped other staff, her gentle smile, and her calm patience even when others were rude. She wasn't like anyone he had ever met. He began finding reasons to check on her, sometimes stopping by her area under the excuse of just passing through. Imran, his assistant, noticed and raised an eyebrow. Sir, you seem very interested in the cleaning department lately, he said jokingly. Rayhan just smiled and said nothing. One evening, when most of the office had emptied, Rayhan found Alina still working. You're still here? He asked. She nodded. I had to finish the conference room. There's a big meeting tomorrow. He looked at the clock. It's almost 8. Have you had dinner? She shook her head. Not yet, sir. I'll eat at home. Rayhan thought for a moment, then said, There's a small restaurant nearby. Join me for dinner. Alina's eyes widened. Sir, I can't. It's not an order, he said gently. Just an invitation. After some hesitation, she agreed. They walked together to a quiet place nearby. The staff there looked surprised to see a millionaire sitting with one of his cleaners, but Rayhan didn't care. He talked to her about simple things, food, books, music. Slowly, Alina began to relax. She even laughed once, a soft, shy laugh that made Rayhan smile without realizing it. You should laugh more often, he said. It suits you. Alina looked down, blushing slightly. I don't get many reasons to, sir. Rayhan's voice softened. Then maybe it's time you did. That night, when Rayhan dropped her home, she thanked him politely. I'm not used to this kind of kindness, she said. You don't have to thank me, he replied. Sometimes people forget how much they matter. You reminded me what honesty means. Maybe I just want to return the favor. She smiled quietly before walking inside her small home. Rayhan watched her go, realizing he hadn't felt this kind of peace in years. Over the next few weeks, their bond grew naturally. He found small ways to help her, arranging a scholarship for her younger brother without telling her, making sure her mother's medical bills were covered anonymously. When Alina eventually found out, she confronted him gently. Sir, you've done too much, she said. You don't have to help me. Rayhan looked into her eyes. I don't do it out of pity, Alina. I do it because I care. Those words hung in the air between them. Alina didn't know what to say. Her heart began to beat faster, though she tried to hide it. She had never imagined someone like Rayhan, someone from a world so far from hers, could speak to her that way. But she also feared what it could mean. People would talk. The world was never kind to a poor girl who got close to a rich man. One rainy evening, Rayhan saw Alina waiting at the gate, drenched because the buses had stopped due to the storm. Without thinking twice, he stopped his car and offered her a ride. Get in, he said. She hesitated but then nodded. Inside, the silence was filled only with the sound of rain. Finally, Rayhan spoke. You've changed me, Alina. She turned to him in surprise. Changed you? How? He smiled faintly. Before you, I never cared about people. I cared about numbers, deals, power, but you made me see what really matters. Her eyes softened. I didn't do anything, sir. You just opened your heart, he chuckled. Maybe you're right. But you're the one who helped me open it. When they reached her home, she turned to thank him, but he stopped her. Alina, he said quietly, if anyone ever hurts you or your family, promise me you'll tell me. You're not alone anymore. She nodded, her throat tight. Thank you, sir, she whispered, her eyes glistening. As he drove away, Rayhan couldn't stop thinking about her face, the quiet strength, the kindness, the innocence that shone through every word she spoke. He knew his feelings were growing, but he wasn't ready to admit them. Not to her, not even to himself. Meanwhile, Alina lay awake that night, thinking about him too. She knew she was stepping into dangerous territory, feelings she shouldn't have, dreams that didn't belong to her world. But her heart wouldn't listen. Somewhere deep down, she already knew. This was no longer just gratitude. It was love, pure and impossible, yet undeniable. And though neither of them said it aloud, both Rayhan and Alina could feel it. The whisper that once saved a life had now started something far greater. A bond that was slowly turning into love. The next morning, Rayhan woke up early, his mind sharper than ever. Alina's story had shaken something deep inside him. He could no longer sit and wait for the truth to reveal itself. He needed to know if RK Holdings was really trying to trap him the same way they had destroyed her father. After a quick breakfast, he drove straight to his office, skipping all meetings. His assistant Imran noticed his serious expression and asked if everything was all right. Rayhan only said, "Cancel all my appointments today. I have something important to handle." Once in his office, Rayhan pulled out the contract again. Every word seemed to mock him now. How could he have been so blind? He had trusted his partner Kamran for years. They had built the company together, side by side. But now, even his friend's smile seemed suspicious. Around mid-morning, Rayhan's private investigator Faisal called him. "Sir, I found something," he said. "RK Holdings is under investigation for fraud in another city. They've been accused of tricking smaller companies into unfair contracts, the same pattern your employee described." Rayhan's hand tightened around his phone. "Send me all the details," he said sharply. When the files arrived, he read them carefully. The evidence was shocking. RK Holdings had indeed destroyed several small businesses, forcing them into debt and taking control of their assets. It was exactly like what Alina's father had faced. Rayhan leaned back in his chair, feeling anger rise inside him. His own business partner Kamran had been pushing this deal aggressively, saying it was their golden opportunity. Now Rayhan finally understood why. He decided not to confront Kamran yet, not until he knew everything. He needed proof. He spent the entire day reviewing financial records, checking every clause and cross-referencing names. As he dug deeper, he found one small but dangerous clause buried in the last few pages. Hidden term that allowed RK Holdings to take full ownership of certain assets if Rayhan's company failed to meet specific performance targets. Those targets were unrealistic and clearly designed to make him fail. It was a trap. Rayhan felt his pulse quicken. Alina had been right all along. He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city below. For years, he had trusted people based on money and status, but the one person who had saved him from disaster was a cleaning lady, someone the world would never even notice. He smiled faintly, realizing how strange fate could be. That afternoon, Kamran came to see him. "Rayhan, my friend," Kamran said cheerfully. "Why haven't you signed the contract yet?" "They're waiting." Rayhan kept his voice calm. "I'm still reviewing it," he said. Kamran frowned. "Reviewing? You already know it's perfect. Don't waste time. Sign it before they change their offer." Rayhan looked at him closely. "Kamran," he said quietly, "do you trust RK Holdings?" Kamran laughed nervously. "Of course I do. They're powerful people. We'll make millions from this deal." Rayhan's gaze hardened. "You sound like you've already made your share." Kamran froze for a second, then forced a laugh. "What do you mean?" Rayhan shook his head. "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." Kamran tried to change the subject, but Rayhan's silence made him uncomfortable. Finally, Kamran left, mumbling something about deadlines. As soon as he was gone, Rayhan called his lawyer. "Prepare a termination letter," he said. "We're canceling the deal." The lawyer sounded shocked. "Sir, are you sure? This is a massive opportunity." Rayhan replied firmly, "It's not an opportunity, it's a trap." He hung up and took a deep breath. He felt both relieved and furious. He had almost lost everything. That evening, when most employees had left, Rayhan saw Alina cleaning near the reception area. She looked up, startled as he approached. "Sir, do you need something?" she asked nervously. Rayhan shook his head and said, "No, I just wanted to thank you." She looked confused. "For what?" He smiled slightly. "For saving me," Alina frowned. "I don't understand." Rayhan explained everything, how he had investigated the deal, what he found, and how her warning had stopped him from walking straight into a trap. Alina's eyes widened in disbelief. "So it was true," she said softly. "They tried to do it again." Rayhan nodded. "Yes, and because of you, they failed." For a moment, Alina didn't speak. Then she said quietly, "I didn't do anything special, sir. I just told you what I knew." Rayhan shook his head. "No, Alina. You did something no one else had the courage to do. You told me the truth when everyone else stayed silent." Alina smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "Sometimes the truth is all a poor person has, sir. It's the only thing we can offer." Rayhan felt something warm stir inside him. Respect, admiration, maybe even something more. He had met countless people in his life who wanted his money, his fame, or his attention. But this woman, this simple, honest woman, wanted nothing but his safety. "Alina," he said softly, "if there's ever anything I can do for you, anything at all, tell me." She shook her head. "You already have, sir. You listened." That night, when Rayhan returned home, he sat alone in his garden under the stars. The cool wind brushed his face, but his heart felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, he felt gratitude, not for his wealth, but for the people he had ignored for too long. He realized that real value didn't come from expensive deals or big profits. It came from honesty, kindness, and courage, the kind Alina had shown him. Before going to bed, he made one more decision. He called his company's HR department and said, "Give Alina a permanent position. Double her salary, and make sure she never has to worry about her job again." The HR officer hesitated but obeyed. As Rayhan turned off the lights, he smiled quietly to himself. The whisper that once confused him had now become a voice he would never forget. A voice that not only saved his company, but also touched his heart. He didn't know it yet, but that whisper was only the beginning of something much deeper, something called love. The next evening, Rayhan couldn't shake the thoughts running through his head. Alina's story about her father, RK Holdings, and the betrayal he suffered haunted him. Every time he looked at the contract, he felt a strange chill, like the paper itself was whispering danger. He decided to dig deeper. He called his lawyer and asked him to quietly verify every clause and company background, but he didn't tell Kamran, his partner, about it. He wanted to see the truth for himself. That night, Rayhan stayed late at the office again. The building was almost empty. He sat near the window, staring at the glowing city below, thinking about how fragile trust could be. He remembered Alina's trembling voice and her eyes filled with pain. He didn't know why her words mattered so much to him. Maybe because no one had warned him like that before. Not for money, not for gain, just from pure care. He didn't want to admit it, but she had touched something in his heart. As he leaned back in his chair, he heard faint footsteps outside the office door. He turned, it was her again. Alina walked in quietly, holding a cleaning tray. She looked surprised to see him still there. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I thought you had gone home," she said softly. "It's all right," Rayhan replied, his tone gentle. "You can continue your work." She nodded and began dusting the corner shelves, avoiding his eyes. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the sound of her cloth brushing against wood. Rayhan watched her for a few seconds before finally saying, "Alina, do you still believe I shouldn't sign that deal?" Her hands stopped moving. Slowly, she turned toward him. "Yes, sir," she said firmly. "I'm sure of it." Rayhan tilted his head, curiosity lighting his face. "Tell me something," he said. "How did you even recognize those people? It's been years since your father's time, hasn't it?" Alina hesitated, then placed the cloth down. "I recognize the logo," she said quietly. "It's the same one that was printed on every letter they sent to my father. The same one that came when they took everything away from us." "I can't forget it." Rayhan stood up and walked closer to her desk. And your father, what exactly happened to him? He asked carefully. Alina took a deep breath, her eyes glistening. He was a good man, sir, she began softly. He worked hard all his life. When RK Holdings offered him a partnership, he thought his dreams had finally come true. But after he signed, they tricked him into taking blame for financial losses he didn't cause. They destroyed his name. He lost everything, our home, our respect, even his health. He tried to fight, but no one helped him. They were powerful, and he was just one man. He didn't survive much longer after that. Her voice broke at the end, and tears rolled down her cheeks. Rayhan felt a lump in his throat. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. The pain in her story was too real to ignore. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I had no idea. Alina wiped her tears quickly. You don't have to be sorry, sir. I just didn't want you to go through what he did. When I saw that same company name on your file, my heart stopped. I knew I had to say something, even if it cost me my job. Rayhan looked at her in silence. He realized how much courage it must have taken for her to speak up. Most people would have stayed quiet, afraid of losing their work. But Alina had risked everything for him. He felt a strange pull in his heart, something gentle yet strong. You're very brave, Alina, he said. Not many people would do what you did. She smiled faintly. Sometimes bravery comes when you have nothing left to lose. There was a long pause. Rayhan walked back to his desk, still watching her. You said your father didn't survive the pressure, he said slowly. Was it? He didn't finish his question, but Alina nodded. Yes, she whispered. He took his own life. He couldn't bear seeing us suffer anymore. Her voice cracked again. I was 16 then. After that, I decided I would never let people like them hurt anyone else if I could stop it. Rayhan felt his chest tighten. He didn't know how to respond. The pain in her story felt like a wound that time couldn't heal. He wanted to comfort her, but he knew words weren't enough. Thank you for telling me, he said finally. I promise you, I won't let them win this time. Alina looked up at him, surprised by the determination in his voice. You'll investigate it? She asked. Rayhan nodded. Yes, I'll find out the truth. And if what you're saying is right, I'll make sure they never ruin anyone else again. She smiled softly, a tear still glistening on her cheek. That's all I wanted, sir. When she left the room, Rayhan sat back in his chair, deep in thought. He couldn't believe how a simple encounter with a cleaning lady had opened his eyes to something much darker. He picked up his phone and called his private investigator. I want you to dig into RK Holdings, he ordered. Find out everything, their financials, their partnerships, and every case they've been involved in. The man on the other end agreed immediately. After ending the call, Rayhan looked around the quiet office. Everything suddenly felt different, colder, more fragile. He realized that even his success, his luxury, his confidence, all of it could be destroyed in a moment if he trusted the wrong people. He walked toward the window and looked out at the city lights again. Somewhere down there, Alina was walking home, probably taking the bus after a long day of work. She had nothing, yet she was the one who had protected him, the man with everything. That night, as he lay in bed, Rayhan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her, her trembling voice, her strength, her honesty. There was something about Alina that reminded him of what real courage looked like. The kind that didn't need power or wealth, just a kind heart and truth. He didn't know it yet, but his world was already beginning to change. The man who once trusted only contracts and signatures was now learning to trust a whisper, one that came from the heart. The next morning, Rayhan arrived at his office earlier than usual. His assistant, Imran, greeted him with the same cheerful energy, but Rayhan's mood was different. His mind was stuck on Alina's whisper. It was strange. Just one sentence from a cleaning lady, yet it had disturbed his peace completely. He sat at his desk, staring at the unopened contract that lay in front of him. His lawyer had called twice that morning, reminding him to sign and send it back. But Rayhan couldn't do it. Something inside him told him to wait. Her voice still echoed in his mind, calm but full of warning. Don't sign that paper. He tried to brush off the thought, telling himself it was nonsense. Maybe Alina had no idea what she was saying. Maybe it was a guess or a random fear. But there was something about her eyes, the way they looked so sure, so full of worry, that kept haunting him. He picked up the contract and flipped through the pages again. The terms looked perfect, the numbers matched, and the deal promised huge profits. Yet, for the first time, Rayhan didn't trust what he saw. He called his assistant in. "Imran, who hired the new cleaning staff?" he asked casually. Imran looked surprised. "Sir, the management company sent them last week." "Why do you ask?" Rayhan replied. "There's one woman, Alina. Can you get her file for me?" Imran nodded and left. A few minutes later, Imran returned, holding a thin folder. "Here it is, sir." "But there's not much in it. Just her ID, address, and hiring date." Rayhan opened it. Everything seemed simple. No criminal record, no experience in big companies, and nothing suspicious. Still, something didn't add up. He closed the folder and said, "All right, you can go." After Imran left, Rayhan sat silently, tapping his pen on the desk. Why would someone like her risk her job to warn him? She could have stayed quiet, done her work, and left. But she didn't. Later that afternoon, Rayhan decided to take a walk around the company floors. He wasn't looking for anything specific, but his eyes kept searching for her face. Finally, near the hallway leading to the conference room, he saw her, Alina, carrying a bucket and mop, wiping the marble floor. She looked up for a second and froze when she saw him. Her eyes widened and her hands stopped moving. Rayhan walked closer, his expression calm but serious. "You told me something last night," he said quietly. "Why?" Alina glanced around nervously. A few employees were nearby, watching them curiously. "Please, sir, not here," she whispered. "People will misunderstand." Rayhan nodded slightly and said, "Fine. Meet me in my office after you finish your shift." Then he turned and walked away. Hours later, when the office was empty and silent again, Alina knocked on his door softly. "Come in," Rayhan said. She stepped inside, holding her hands tightly together. "Sit," he said, pointing to the chair across his desk. She sat down, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Now tell me," Rayhan began. "Why did you say that last night? How do you know about this contract?" Alina stayed silent for a few seconds, her face pale. "Sir, I'm sorry for speaking out of turn," she said finally. "I shouldn't have interfered. But I had to. I recognize the company name on the file, RK Holdings." Rayhan leaned forward, surprised. "You know them?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, my father worked for them years ago. He trusted them. They ruined him." Rayhan's eyes narrowed. "Ruined him? How?" Alina's voice trembled as she spoke. "They promised him a partnership deal, just like they promised you. But after he signed the papers, they took everything. His business, his savings, even our home. He tried to fight them, but they were powerful. He didn't survive the pressure." Her voice broke at the last line, and tears filled her eyes. Rayhan sat quietly, watching her. Her story sounded painful but real. Still, part of him doubted. Was this all true, or just a story to gain sympathy? "And you think they're trying to do the same thing to me?" he asked. Alina looked up, her eyes shining with sincerity. "Yes, sir. I don't have proof, but I know their tricks. They always find people who trust too easily." Rayhan leaned back in his chair, thinking hard. Everything she said matched his uneasy feeling about the contract. Yet he couldn't fully believe her. Not yet. "All right," he said finally. "You can go now." Alina nodded and stood up. But before she reached the door, Rayhan said, "And Alina, thank you for warning me. Most people wouldn't care." She turned slightly and said softly, "Sometimes people just need someone brave enough to tell the truth." Then she left, closing the door quietly behind her. That night, Rayhan sat alone in his office again. He couldn't focus on anything else. Alina's words kept circling his mind. Her story about her father sounded real. The pain in her eyes wasn't something anyone could fake. For the first time, Rayhan began to doubt his trusted business partner, Kamran. He pulled out the contract again and started reading it line by line. The clauses seemed fine at first, but something about the fine print at the bottom caught his attention. It mentioned a transfer clause that gave full control of certain assets to RK Holdings under certain unforeseen conditions. That line bothered him. He realized he had never noticed it before. Rayhan sat back and rubbed his temples. Could Alina be right? Could Kamran really be setting him up? He didn't want to believe it, but he couldn't ignore it either. He decided not to sign anything until he knew the truth. As he left his office, he glanced down the hallway where the cleaning staff worked. Alina was there, wiping the floor under the dim lights, her movements slow but graceful. For a moment, Rayhan just watched her silently. There was something different about her, something pure, honest, and strong. A woman who had nothing, yet dared to speak the truth to someone who had everything. He smiled slightly to himself and whispered, "Who are you, Alina?" He didn't know it yet, but that question would soon lead him to the biggest discovery of his life. One that would change not just his business, but his heart forever. Late at night, the city lights shone like stars scattered across the earth, and inside one of those shining buildings lived Rayhan Malik, a young and successful millionaire. Everyone called him a genius businessman, the man who could turn anything into gold. But behind his charming smile and confident face, Rayhan carried something money could never fix: loneliness. His big mansion was filled with silence, his phone full of contacts but none who truly cared. That night, after attending a celebration party for a deal worth millions, Rayhan returned home feeling empty. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the grand hall as he loosened his tie and walked toward his office. He was tired but decided to review some important documents lying on his desk. The room smelled of polish and expensive wood. Everything looked perfect, except for one thing. There was someone else there, quietly cleaning the corner near the window. She moved softly, almost invisible, wearing a simple uniform and holding a small cloth in her hands. Rayhan barely noticed her at first until the gentle clinking of a glass jar made him look up. It was a new face, a young woman, maybe in her early 20s. Her name tag read Alina. She was wiping the glass shelves, careful not to make noise. Her eyes were calm, but carried a strange sadness, like someone who had seen too much pain for her age. Rayhan didn't speak, and she didn't look at him either. The silence stretched between them, only broken by the soft hum of the air conditioner. Rayhan turned his attention back to the document in his hand, a contract waiting for his signature, the final step of a massive merger that would double his company's worth. His lawyer had said it was safe. His partner had promised it was profitable. Rayhan was ready to sign it that night. But just as he picked up the pen, he heard a quiet voice behind him, a whisper, soft but clear. "Sir, please—" "Don't sign that paper." Rayhan froze. For a moment, he thought he was imagining it. Slowly, he turned around and saw Alina standing there, her hand trembling slightly as she held her cleaning cloth. Her eyes met his for the first time, and something about that look made his heart skip a beat. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice firm but curious. Alina looked nervous, her lips shaking as she tried to speak. I'm sorry, sir," she stammered. "I shouldn't have said anything. It's not my place." Rayhan leaned back in his chair, now more interested than angry. "You told me not to sign this paper. Why?" he asked again. Alina hesitated, glancing at the document as if it held some dark secret. I think it's not safe," she whispered. "You shouldn't trust the people behind it." Rayhan narrowed his eyes. "And how would you know that?" he asked. Alina looked down, twisting the cloth in her hands. "I can't say, sir, but please don't sign it yet." Her voice was filled with sincerity, almost pleading. Rayhan had met countless people in his life. Lawyers, investors, fake friends, all pretending to care but always with a hidden reason. Yet this woman, a cleaning lady he'd never seen before, was risking her job just to warn him. Something about that didn't feel ordinary. He stared at her for a long moment, trying to read her face. She didn't flinch, though her eyes showed fear. "You're new here?" he finally asked. She nodded. "Yes, sir. I joined 2 days ago." Rayhan didn't say anything more. He placed the pen down, slowly folded the document, and stood up. "You may go," he said calmly. Alina lowered her head and left the room quickly, almost running. The sound of the door closing left a strange silence behind. Rehan stood by the window, staring at the city lights outside, his mind racing. Why would she say that? What could she possibly know about this deal? Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe she had overheard something from the staff. But her tone? It wasn't casual. It was the kind of warning that came from someone who had seen danger before. That night, Rehan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her words echoing in his mind. "Don't sign that paper." He remembered the way her voice shook but still carried courage. He wasn't used to anyone speaking to him like that. Most people were either scared of him or trying to impress him. But Alina, she seemed different. The next morning, he found himself looking for her. She was cleaning the lobby, her hair tied neatly, working quietly like nothing had happened. When she saw him approaching, she froze, expecting to be fired. But Rehan only said, "You were in my office last night." She nodded silently. "You said something unusual. Do you want to explain?" She hesitated, looked around, and said softly, "Please, sir, I can't talk about it here. Just trust me and don't sign that paper." Rehan studied her face again. There was no greed, no manipulation, just honesty and fear. For a moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Curiosity mixed with admiration. He didn't understand why her words mattered so much to him, but they did. Without saying another word, he turned and walked away. Later, in his office, he opened the contract again and began reading it more carefully. For the first time, he noticed some strange clauses, small details he hadn't seen before. They seemed harmless, but something about them felt off. He leaned back in his chair, whispering to himself, "Who are you, Alina?" Outside the office, Alina continued her work, pretending not to notice the watchful eyes following her. But deep inside, she knew she had done the right thing. The risk was high. She could lose her job, maybe more, but she couldn't stay silent. She had seen people like Rehan get ruined by trusting the wrong partners. She didn't want history to repeat itself. That single whisper had already changed everything. For her, it was a warning. For him, it was the beginning of something far greater, something that would soon change both their lives forever.